Number 7, Kansas goes on the road to take on number 23, Iowa State. This one, a 1:30 p.m. tip-off on Saturday. You can watch it on CBS, get a nice little early preview of the March Madness music on the CBS regular season matchup here. Haslametrics has the spread at Iowa State, despite being significantly lower ranked in the AP poll. Haslametrics makes the spread Iowa State -7, close to -7.5 on their home floor. Over under around 145, 146, right in the middle there. And this is what's interesting to me about this matchup. I mentioned the AP poll, Kansas 7, Iowa State 23. Eli has similar rankings here. Kansas number 8, Iowa State number 16. But if we look at Haslametrics, they're flip-flopped. Iowa State is higher ranked and Kansas has been downgraded a little bit. So I ask you, Eli, what do you think is playing into this difference between your rankings and our respected friends over at Haslametrics when it comes to Kansas and Iowa State here?
Well, first I want to preface, I kind of hate both of these teams for different reasons, but I make this game Iowa State favored by about 2.5, 3 at home. So just because I have Kansas higher doesn't mean that I'm necessarily favoring the Jayhawks in a very difficult road spot. This is one of the best home environments in college basketball, just like Alabama has, just like Auburn has, and Kentucky at Rupp for that matter. Iowa State has it at Hilton, and they have the advantage too when you look at some of these matchups because Cyclones force the highest percentage of turnovers across college basketball. Like Auburn, one of the best ball pressure units defensively in the country, and Kansas doesn't really have the depth to negate that. And when I say that, you can get worn down offensively, and when you don't have numerous guards off the bench that can handle ball pressure, that can be taxing over the full course of a 40-minute college basketball game. Furphy has really made strides for Kansas in the starting lineup, but outside of what we saw from Nick Timberlake last week against West Virginia, Kansas's depth is pretty gross. That's one reason why I don't like the Jayhawks in this matchup individually and in the long term, but also because foul trouble could be a big issue for the Jayhawks when it comes to them defending Iowa State. And Iowa State, the reason why I don't like the Cyclones in big picture wise long term is because I don't trust their offense. I don't trust them to be able to create in the half court. But where Kansas can be had defensively is they allow a lot of free throws, so they do struggle to stay out of foul trouble for a team that really lacks depth. Big concern. And they also struggle to limit second chance shots, both areas where Iowa State can really take advantage in. And at the other end of the court, where is Kansas's biggest offensive advantage? It's with Hunter Dickinson, the Michigan transfer, down low. Another player I absolutely hate. I don't know how you could like or even have any positive feelings towards Hunter Dickinson, but Cyclones post defense led by Robert Jones is very, very, very efficient. So I don't think there are any matchup advantages for Kansas in this game, to be completely honest, on top of the fact that this is a extremely, extremely tough place to play, like I touched on from the top. I'm not saying Iowa State should be favored by 3 possessions, but high 1 possession. So like I said, 2.5, 3 is where I have this game lined favoring Iowa State.
We like to joke sometimes that Ken Pom is where sportsbooks go to set the lines, and Haslametrics is where bettors go to move the lines. So if that's the case, you know, Ken Pom's around Iowa State -4 here. So I'm thinking maybe we get a lower number than what we're seeing from Haslametrics when this opens. If that's the case, if I can get closer to 3 here on Kansas, that's my hope, with them still being the higher ranked team in the mainstream college basketball world. Then I'm going to be interested in Iowa State here. I saw some of the same things you did, Eli, just to put some more numbers on the points you were making. Not only is Iowa State great at taking the ball away, in Kansas 131st in giveaway percentage, Iowa State converts off of those too. They're number 1 in the country in fast break points off of steals. And Kansas is number 75 in defending fast break points after giving the ball away. Another great metric over at Haslametrics. So I agree with you there. And I 100% agree with you with the depth issues from Kansas. And again, to put a number on it, Kansas ranks 355th in bench minutes this year. That's horrendous. They are also 226th in offensive rebounding percentage. That is inexcusable for Hunter Dickinson. He should be getting more offensive rebounds. They're also 254th in rim and three rate. So no depth. They get tired, and their shot selection is below average, in my opinion, by looking at rim and three rate. What is the ceiling for this Kansas team if that's the case? Like, when we get to the brackets, Eli, this is absolutely a year where this is one of those Kansas teams where I'm going to be looking to fade at a certain point. So keep that in the back of your head, everybody. But I'm with you there. If we get the right number here, maybe closer to one possession, I'm probably going to be interested in taking Iowa State here, just off of that angle of being able to tire Kansas out and being able to get extra possessions off of Kansas not being able to protect the ball. Fair?
Very fair. Not to put a damper on our positivity for the Cyclones in regards to this matchup and just negativity with Kansas overall, but the one area of concern I have with Iowa State is for this matchup solely from a market rating perspective. Iowa State probably shouldn't have covered against Kansas State. Then again, Kansas State has been one of the most fortunate teams in college basketball over the last couple of years under Jerome Tang. I know they made it to the Elite Eight last year, but I still think they're undefeated under Tang in his very short tenure with the Wildcats. That said, Iowa State winning by 11, line closed against Kansas State around -8. So will the market bump up Iowa State too much? You said maybe we'll get a 3. Maybe. But I am a little bit worried just because if the market drives up Iowa State, that's where this could get to the range of unplayable.
I'm going to put you on the spot, ask you one more question here, because I think the Big 12 conference in particular is really interesting in the race for the regular season title. Right now, as we record on Thursday, you have Texas Tech at the top, 4-1 in the conference. Then the 2 lost teams are Houston, Kansas, Iowa State, and Kansas State. And then you have Baylor as the only other team above 500 at 3-2. Despite the standings being pretty packed right now, Houston is favored over the field at BetMGM at -110 to be the regular season champion in the Big 12. Do you agree with that? Or at that price, are you possibly interested in taking a shot at one of these other Big 12 teams?
Maybe Baylor, but I don't trust them enough defensively. This is not your typical Scott Drew defense. And granted, we haven't seen the Bears have that Scott Drew-led defense going back to what they had when they won the national championship a few years ago. So it's been a while, but Baylor ranking outside, I think, the top 60 in adjusted defensive efficiency. Yeah, ranked 63rd. So I'm not there with Baylor. That would be the only team that I think could challenge a Houston. I honestly think that price is kind of short. Okay. I'm not saying I like Houston in the long term, and you're probably asking yourself, what team has Eli said that he likes in the long term for the NCAA tournament?
Damn it.
Well, I'm a little concerned about their guard play, so keep that in mind as a caveat. And the answer is, you're right. I haven't really said one team because I do think there are going to be a lot of upsets.
Madness, man, one and done. It's volatile. It's hard to get in love with somebody completely like like you did with UConn last year.
Exactly. And I also wasn't super high on them going into March because I thought they were going to be able to get exposed with their turnover issues. And Tristan Newton covered that up and then some. And that offense was so efficient with Jordan Hawkins and Andre Jackson in transition, et cetera, et cetera. But where Houston gets themselves into trouble is their shot selection. They really take some difficult shots. But man, does Calvin Sampson get a lot with their guards, out of their guards defensively. And he has done this year in and year out since he took over this Cougars program. LJ Cryer was not known for being a defensive player at Baylor. He has turned into that, which is, I never thought would happen going back to the way this Baylor team was constructed over the last couple of years. Like I said, not a good defensive team. And LJ Cryer was one of the liabilities at that end. Calvin Sampson has turned him into a very, very good and efficient defender. So going back to your question, I think Houston at -110, that may be a buy point. You could have gotten plus money on them over the last couple of weeks, but I don't see any of these teams really competing with Houston to win the Big 12 regular season title. Now, if we're talking about matchups and seeding in the Big 12 tournament, maybe I have a little bit of a different angle. But regular season wise, I think it's Houston and then everybody else.
I think you're probably right. I mean, Ken Palm still projects Houston to win the conference by 3 games. So you may be right that minus 110 is short here. I'll at least just throw out a long shot. It's at least schedule wise interesting to me that Texas Tech doesn't play Houston again. They only play Kansas once. So the schedule's a little bit more manageable for Texas Tech because they're not getting these tough matchups at the top of the conference. They've already beaten BYU, another highly rated team in the Big 12. And they only play Iowa State once. So, I mean, some of these tough doubleheaders that you have on the conference schedule for these upper echelon Big 12 teams, Texas Tech doesn't have that. So it's probably still Houston, but if I'm going to take a long shot, at least by the schedule, Texas Tech is at least interesting to me. So, but I tend to agree with you. I at least wanted to mention it because, you know, it's a bloodbath in the Big 12 if you look at the standings already, and we're not even basically halfway through the conference. So interesting note there.